As the world commemorates the 2021 World Environment Day with the theme of ecosystem restoration, with the campaign of Reimagine, Recreate and Restore, we're here at the UN complex to speak to Ms. Joyce Msuya, the UN Environment Executive Deputy Director. Thank you very much, Madam Joyce, for joining us for this interview. So today we are commemorating World Environment Day. What message do you have for the world on this day?
Thank you, Juma. So the World Environment Day is actually the largest global advocacy program for environment. And the message for this year is about the UN Decade for Ecosystems Restoration. And it is about how to reinvigorate, to restore, and to reimagine nature. So it is really the day to celebrate, to honor, and to protect nature and ecosystems more broadly.
A recent report by UN Environment titled Making Peace with Nature says that humans are making the earth broken and increasingly becoming a livable planet through climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution. What is the status of environment today in the world and even closer in Africa, going by this report?
If you look at the scientific data which we have published, and I'm glad, thank you for referencing our report Making Peace with Nature, what we are seeing is a three planetary crisis. We have an urgency on climate change, on nature, biodiversity loss specifically, as well as pollution and chemicals. If you look at Africa more broadly, all these crises are actually applicable. You take, for example, the sub-regional of East Africa, we have seen unusual patterns of rainfalls, of warming, severe heat when it's supposed to be cold, for example. If you look at some of the water bodies, including the Indian Ocean, the volume of plastic that ends up at our ocean is absolutely unacceptable. And similarly, on biodiversity loss, you see dry areas, trees are being cut. So the three planetary crises do apply to Africa as well. I think we should also not lose sight, a number of African countries do depend on environment for their economic growth and poverty reduction. Take Kenya as an example. The percentage of tourism, tourists that come to Kenya, domestic tourism, that contribute to GDP growth is estimated to be between 40%. So it's massive, and the links between nature, economic growth and poverty reduction is also there. So it's not just about nature, it's actually caring for environment, for people as well as for planet.
Talking about restoration, today we begin UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Kindly explain to our audience what this means in terms of action on the ground.
Today we're launching a very important report, as you rightly pointed out, Juma, on UN Decade for Ecosystems Restoration. When you break it down simply, we basically have about a decade to actually reverse what we are seeing as nature loss globally. Now, you talked about what should we expect, or should we expect to see on the ground. The report will indicate, if you look at the broad range of the ecosystems, forest, freshwater bodies, land degradation, etc., the report will highlight some of the initiatives that communities, governments, private sector, academia, and different stakeholders can actually take to protect nature. The report also states the urgency of the problem, which require not just promises, but actually action. Now, what do we see on the ground? Let me give you one statistics. If you look at the Mount Kenya ecosystems, just on water, you have 2 million people that are dependent on Mount Kenya entire ecosystems for their water and livelihood. So what is at stake is actually if we do not protect, if we do not reinvigorate and reimagine the kind of nature and ecosystems we want, the livelihoods of people are likely to be affected. And here you have a direct link with the Sustainable Development Goals, which are also less than a decade away from the timeline of the goals that we set. So it is about people, it is about planet through nature and looking at ecosystems holistically.
Now, in Africa, just about half of our land mass is dry land, and half of population live there. Are we looking at solutions targeting these areas?
If you look at our report, it's actually looking at broad range of ecosystems, including dry land, freshwater, forest, etc. And in our provision of solutions and advocating for environmental issues to member states, we actually look at the entire ecosystem because there is interconnectedness. So I gave an example from Mount Kenya ecosystems, but also within the space of dry land, it's important to look at the entire system. So yes, we do. We are within UNEP, for example, working with a larger UN system in supporting the Sahel, for example, as part of coming up with initiatives looking at solar renewable energy because of the availability of the sun. But also we have been looking and studying the water patterns because water shortage is a big, big problem in dry land. So looking comprehensively is one approach, and then two, bringing other partners in Africa. For example, we have a very nice program with the Africa Development Bank, providing technical assistance towards the Sahel, but looking at renewable energy provision. So they come in with financing and we bring in technical assistance as well as science. So in summary, I would say yes, as part of the, as you will see from the report, we look at dry land as part of a larger ecosystem towards UN Decade for Restoration.
Now, let's talk about COVID. Emissions reduced significantly last year on account of COVID-19 restrictions. And now we are talking about building back better post the pandemic. Are there any initiatives by governments or individuals that you may have seen to be inspiring in this regard?
So one is, I think we should not forget that the pandemic is first and foremost a humanitarian issue. I mean, there are thousands of people who have lost lives and or affected through human losses. So our hearts are with the affected population. On an example of an inspiring initiative, I would mention one, and this is the Africa Green Stimulus initiative, which was put together by the African Ministers of Environment. There is a network called AMSEN, and the AMSEN Secretariat is actually within UNEP. And what they're looking at as part of the stimulus packages that are being put together as part of the economic recoveries, they're introducing some green initiatives so the economies could be rebuilt back better, but also greener. What our role has been is, one, to provide secretarial services to AMSEN, the African Ministerial Conference of Environment, but also technical assistance. So for example, some of our technical experts that are working on medical waste management, they are providing support to AMSEN. And then third is convening power, bringing the African ministers together, but also providing some of the science and data that we have to help inform them making the right decisions.
Now, let's talk about politics here a bit. It has been a few months since America returned to the table of climate conversations. How much significance does this have going forward?
UNEP serves all member states. We did engage and continue to engage with the United States of America. We have a permanent representative who is actually here and very active in leadership role as part of our governing body. We are very excited and very much welcome, as our Secretary General has mentioned, the recommitment of the United States government, for example, if you look at the Paris Agreement. So we very much welcome, given the size of USA economically, but also leadership. I think it's fantastic that they are back at the global stage to actually push together with other member states in addressing the three planetary crises, climate change, but they're also involved in biodiversity loss as well as chemicals and pollution. So overall, it's good news that we very much welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Joyce.
Thank you very much, Juma. Thank you. Asante.